Welcome to Umber Talks, a real estate podcast. We're here to learn, share, and explore ideas with the best in the industry. Enjoy. Today on the Umber Talks podcast, we are joined by a true architectural icon, Barry J. Hobin. Barry has shaped the very skyline of Canada's capital, Ottawa. His name is synonymous with thoughtful, high-standard design, and anyone in the city's real estate or development world knows his influence. Over nearly 5 decades, Barry has left his mark on projects that define our community, from projects like Greystone Village to some of Ottawa's most beautiful residential homes to the redevelopment of Lansdowne Park. His work has not only transformed Ottawa neighbourhoods, but has also set the standard for design excellence and city building in Ottawa. In 2024, Barry was honoured with the Ontario Association of Architects Lifetime Design Achievement Award, joining the ranks of Canada's most celebrated architects. Beyond the accolades, Barry's known for his philosophy of teamwork, collaboration, and a deep commitment to building community through design. And this is the Umber Talks podcast, powered by Umber Realty, an independent real estate brokerage out of Ottawa and Toronto. We work across every facet of real estate: luxury residences, land development, urban condominiums, and commercial investment properties. So through this podcast, we bring together leading academics, seasoned practitioners, and bold entrepreneurs. Our guests, they share their ideas that drive innovation and shape the future of the real estate industry. So we recorded this episode with Barry J. Hobin because early in my career, Barry's name kept coming up again and again. His work, I noticed it carried this brand of its own. I experienced this firsthand. So early in my career, I was selling many of the condos and homes that he had designed. And my clients, they loved living in a Barry J. Hobin home. So his reputation, it was so strong. You would see in the MLS remarks as part of a realtor's marketing pitch, this is a Barry J. Hobin designed home. And this carried a lot of weight. And that's when I knew this wasn't just an architect. This was a real brand. So as I grew in the industry, I kept seeing these new projects launched by his firm. And some of my favorite buildings in Ottawa carried his signature. So naturally, over my career, I became curious about the person behind that brand. So here we are, sitting down with Barry J. Hobin. And in this episode, you're going to hear Barry's story, starting from his childhood through to how he became one of Ottawa's most prominent architects. We dive into his process as a designer. We explore some of his most significant projects, and we get to know Barry on a deeper level. So if you love real estate, you love architecture, you love design, or you simply enjoy hearing the story of someone who's shaped a city, this is an episode you don't want to miss. And I ask Barry a big question. I ask him, 100 years from now, what's one single word that you would like to be remembered by? So tune in to find out. Enjoy. All right. Welcome to the Umber Talks podcast. Today's guest, Barry J. Hobin. I've been very, very excited for this episode. He's a leading award-winning architect whose firm has designed some of our most admired homes in Ottawa, many civic institutions, mixed-use developments, residential homes, custom homes. So we're very, very excited to have you on the podcast. It's an honor to have you on here. So thank you.
Great to be here.
Thank you. So one thing, when I got into the real estate business 14 years ago now, your name started coming up immediately. And it was, Barry J. Hobin project, Barry J. Hobin project, Barry J. Hobin project. And they were very coveted projects. They were all spoken of very fondly. And so over the years, I started to follow your work, and we sold a ton of your products. So I was always very curious about Barry J. Hobin as an individual. So today, we're going to talk about some of your work. We're going to talk about your processes. We're going to talk about the future of Ottawa. But I would love to start by talking about you and understanding your journey and how you got to where you are, but taking it way back to your childhood and perhaps your moment of inspiration when you decided you wanted to become an architect.
Well, that's a really interesting thing when you unpack your life. I don't think there was a clear moment. It's sort of evolved. I'm one of 4 kids. My father was a contractor. My mom, traditionally home-based, grew up in Westboro.
Okay.
Grew up in Westboro. My dad actually was a developer builder, kind of like he developed the first subdivisions in Stittsville. We're all under Hobin. That's why there's Hobin Street in Stittsville. And so there's a big legacy there. Both my parents are incredibly creative, not in the sense of any bold thing, but they demonstrated the ability to create something out of nothing. My mom was a seamstress and a very creative person. You know, anything she did she just had this natural creative style. My dad, just amazing. Like, you know, he taught us, and me particularly because I worked construction right up till after I graduated. I never worked in an architect's office. My dad,
You had worked construction?
I worked construction. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's my dad being a home builder and in an era when, before subcontracting. So your team did everything. So we learned
Right.
the very tactile side of creating. Like you hammer and saw, whatever you did, you could do everything from pouring a concrete floor to laying hardwood floors to, you know, so viscerally understanding what it meant to actually build a house.
Right.
Was very much part of a creative process.
So how young were you when you were on the tools?
I started working when I was like 10 years old. And I worked until I was 24,
Right.
doing that kind of stuff. So that was one stream. Like both my parents, great, very, very creative. People of incredible character, not well off by any sense. We never felt that we were deprived or anything. They believed strongly in anything. People of strong Christian faith, great values. You know, you learn to sing, you learn to craft, you learn a whole bunch of things that kind of, and you were made to feel like you could do this, like you could do stuff, right? So that's one key component of kind of growing up. And then another piece obscure piece that, you know, you may not think about was sport, and particularly team sports. And I started playing football when I was like 10 years old. I played football right up through to time I was 24 when I graduated from Carleton. So I played football the entire time.
Did you play for Carleton?
I played for Carleton.
What position?
I played offensive and defensive tackle. I could show you some photos, but you wouldn't believe it. The value of teamwork and the value of winning and losing. And I say this, and I just gave a talk to Upper Canada College about this. Football is one of those amazing sports where you have very diverse individuals all playing together, and nobody wins unless everybody wins. Like you can't win just because you're a great tackler and your team loses. Like that doesn't make any sense.
Right.
So football was a great instructor about diversity and diversity around alignment. There's a lot of superficial language we use these days in our culture. Diversity makes you stronger. I'm sorry, diversity doesn't make you stronger. Diversity aligned can make you powerfully strong if you're focused on the same thing. So that the notion of teamwork, I don't think it was as rigorously important when I was starting the practice, but it became really, really more important as we started to build a culture in this place about creating and creating together and how we all were responsible to each other. Now, it doesn't, you know, no architect actually operates alone. He works in the context of consultants, clients, approval agencies, and your own your own staff. So there needs to be this alignment in order to actually do anything creative. So, I basically, going back, I played football, graduated high school, went to a brand new high school in the West End, Champlain High School. And because it was brand new, you virtually got to play every sport. There was no cliques. There were no groups that separated. You could do everything. And so high school is a fantastic experience, like just really fantastic. Played basketball, football, track, did everything. Same time I was great in art and math and other things. And so, just gradually, I think my father mentioned to me, maybe grade 8, they had a parent-teacher interview, and they said, well, the teacher thinks maybe you might be suited to architecture. And my dad, by the way, while he was a great craftsman, was also an impeccable draftsman.
Mm.
And he could draw, just phenomenal draftsman. I use that term draftsman because that's what they were at that point in time, right?
Yeah.
Taught me a lot from that perspective. And ironically, or interestingly enough, he ended up, when I went out on my own in my practice in 79, my first job was to design 5 houses for the Compo Corporation. My father drew all those 5 houses. I designed them.
Yeah.
He drew them.
Oh, yeah. How did you land that first client?
It's a person, they know a person, right?
So how old were you at the time about?
I was 29 at the time. It's pretty interesting time period. I graduated. And I started to buy real estate.
Did you?
So I bought my first house, a very famous, in our neighborhood, a house called the Hollywood Parade. It's on James Street. It's a very famous row house, designed in 1892, built in 1892. And I owned that house right up until middle of the pandemic. Bought it for $40,000 and $10,000 deposit. 5 came from my student loan, which I never spent, and 5 I borrowed from my father-in-law. So you get these two little worlds. I was learning about architecture, but I fell in love with these buildings. And
was this a commercial property?
No, it was a res project.
And you rented it out?
I did all the work myself, lived there. And then I started to buy and sell, and build up, by the time I was 30, I was living kind of mortgage free like that. So this kind of combination of real estate and practice sort of went hand in hand.
Right.
I worked for a couple of firms locally. Lynn Kaufman, originally it was a firm called DeBell Kaufman Goodwright. Then I went to work for Ebb Zeidler and CMHC on the Woodruff's demonstration project. And a little bit on LeBreton Flats, actually, because it was a federal project. And then I went back to work for Len Kaufman. So in 79, a friend of mine who lived kitty corner from my house on James Street worked for the Compo Corporation. And he knew me from school. So he said, are you interested in maybe designing these 5 houses? So, what do you got to lose? I mean, basically take the summer off, design these 5 houses. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out.
So was that when your firm was born?
Yeah, that's when the firm was formed. Basically, you had to apply for a license.
Right.
So that was May 1979. And, 2.5 years later, you figured out, you can make a living doing this.
Yeah. And then did good work, I'm assuming, and then word.
Yeah, I was rather simplistic at the beginning. I sort of assumed that if you did good work, people just phone you up. That's a really naive thought, actually, if people don't know who you are. But, there was a point where I was thinking of moving to Calgary you'll love this, in 1981, just before the energy crisis and national energy policy, which absolutely devastated Calgary. I was going to move out there. I had a client, so we went to visit this client, and I was offered a job making twice what I was making here. And I thought about it a lot, and then I had at that point in time, 2 young kids, and we started a family, and stayed here, and then about 3 or 4 months later, we applied to some awards programs, the Ontario Renews Awards. for several of our infill inner city project we were working on. We were doing a lot of renovations at that time. I saw a huge value in old neighborhoods, great houses. So it wasn't so much about new houses. We were taking these and we were reimagining them. And many of the houses I lived in myself, 80, 82 James Street, 44 First Avenue, these are places and our first awards were for projects that we had done on James Street where I was living and on 44 First Avenue where we moved to. So with a little bit of publicity, now the publicity didn't come in the real estate section. It came in page 2 of the newspaper. Page 2 is news.
You took an ad out?
No.
Oh.
No, this is news coverage.
Real
So
coverage.
Ottawa Architect wins provincial awards. So it's kind of a confirmation of what we did. And that just grew, like it grew. Now you're getting into, what happened in terms of the practice. But I think the things that we saw in residential design, particularly in existing older houses, was a sense of craft, amazingly built houses, amazingly designed, unusual features, high ceilings, bigger windows, shaped windows, arch windows, which we weren't seeing in the residential sector at all. And really, at that point in time when our practice started, if you were doing residential work, you were deemed to be a B-class architect. Like not all the architects were doing, museums and, big public buildings and schools, etc. If you just did residential, you were kind of like, sort of. So there really wasn't an architect. Well, there's one or two at that point in time who actually did residential with a flair.
Is that still today?
No, that's changed completely.
Okay.
So and I would say that whether it's the process of time, the timing in terms of our culture, or the influence of our firm, and I think they mutually support each other, those ideas. Architects doing strictly residential design at a small scale is now a very viable profession, a very viable and in many cases respected path. So you would see this in real estate. But out of that came a series of firms that actually started to do residential work. You probably know many of them, but I just think that I'm very proud of the fact that there was a market created. Yeah. Now, it doesn't come out of nothing. At that point in time, this is early 80s, we had seen tremendous inflationary pressure on the cost of a house. From 68 to 72, from 72 to 76, from 72 to 78, 78 to 82, 82 to 86, the price of house doubled literally every 4 years. Wow. The average person owning a house suddenly realized, my house is more than a house. It's an economic engine in many ways for our wealth. It's a challenge we see today because now we have priced the younger generation out of the house. We can talk about that. But at that point in time, suddenly people who designed houses, people started to aspire, if I've got this asset, how come I'm not using a professional when I'm working with this asset? And that's probably an underlying current that shaped our ability and going forward. And it's continued all the way through that process for the last 45 years.
Right.
So, just in terms of history, that's where it all began. When it started to take off, it didn't take off like this straight up. It just gradually, the firm grew from 5 to 10 to 10 to 15 to 15 to 20 to 25. Now we have a firm of 45 people, which is large for Ottawa. There are many firms in Ottawa who are national firms and they're staffed elsewhere, and they do mostly government or institutional kinds of work.
Well, that's interesting. So if I'm understanding it correctly, it's the influences of your parents being very crafty, having worked with your hands, having that unique experience where you're actually building homes yourself, coming in and leaning into the residential, and having the team sports, football, kind of shape understanding, moving people with different outlooks or different objectives, pointing everyone in the same direction, and the inflationary pressure on homes, and throw an award in there and just keep working hard.
Yeah, you captured it all. But basically, you often think it's just about you. You have to realize your place and time in history as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so there's lots of talented people. Lots of people worked hard in the past, but just we seem to catch that and then being strategic in responding to it. So
did you have points where, as you're building, as you're moving along, um, were you more naturally going with your gut and going with the flow and understanding where to focus, or did you have times where you sat back and reflected and say, okay, this is my new strategic plan?
really good question. Never had a long-term plan, but looked at every short-term opportunity. So I'll give you a good example. Like we were doing mostly residential work. And then an opportunity came up for the new Ronald McDonald House, which was at Shield. And I can remember it very clearly because we were chosen to do the job, but it was kind of taking one sense of design and taking it to a different place and trying to see how you could influence it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there was several institutional projects that came along like that. We did a church out in Canada, a passive solar church, which is new technology. We did some work where we did some fire stations, which is hard to believe. Fire station. We did fire station number 5 on Montreal Road. We started to look at these opportunities, how we could actually take the design attitudes to a different market. Like the Dovercourt Rec Center was an early project that we worked on, and we won an accessibility award from them, from the Ontario government for it. And our combination of that and developing some solid clients who used and reused you again. And one of the most stellar of those is Charles Short Developments, and Doug Casey is a remarkable client, really interested in architecture. And we started to grow and do projects with them. And then later on, Uniform Developments, and we've done a wide range of work for both those people. But in that very early stage, making that transition strictly from res to another thing, you kind of go, what in the world? What's the relationship between designing a community center and designing a house? And, it's really the intensity to detail, paying attention to design, and responding to a client, responding to the program. I think architectural education misses 2 clear things along the way. One is the notion there's a client. There always is a client. You don't tell the client what they need. They tell you what they need. And you really depend on developing great client relationships. The other thing is you're going to be working in a team environment for your entire career. Mm-hmm. If you saw that recent movie, The Brutalist, I don't know if you've endured.
I haven't seen
3.5 hours of stereotypical stupidity and great acting, if you can put those 2 things together. Where Adrian Brody plays Laszlo Loft, or whatever his name is. He's a Bulgarian, or he's an architect. And it's that simplistic notion that it's just one person who designs everything by himself. You never see a staff member. There's no paper. Like he's out on the site as if he's actually literally telling people what to do in construction. It's so simplistic.
Right.
It's ridiculous. And I think those are 2 things that you always have to keep in mind, and when you're working, and you probably see it in your world. There's always a client. Mm-hmm. There's always an understanding of the marketplace too, right? Yeah. That positions whatever you're selling or whatever you're representing to a situation. And I think over the years, my combination of knowledge about real estate and knowledge about design allowed us to understand very clearly what a client was after, particularly in the entrepreneurial sector. And it applies to others as well, but knew it in the entrepreneurial sector very well, so that I know much about real estate as my real estate clients do, like have to. Not because I'm going to compete with them or anything, but I understand the little subtleties that make a difference and that makes a project successful or not successful.
Now, when the developer comes to you with a pro forma or a building envelope and says, "This is what we're looking to achieve," do they mostly come to you and say, "Provide us with an architectural solution," or are they more saying, "This is the style we want to go with, make it happen"?
Our best clients come to us as they're acquiring land, or maybe even before they acquire land. What do you think? What's possible here? So our best clients use us not as draftsmen or kind of prepare me a set of plans. So if I ever get a call from anybody that says, I need a set of plans, I instantaneously know they're talking to the wrong person. If you want to access the full creative process, you get a hold of us before you're actually thinking as you're imagining what you're doing. So for me, it's like understanding land, understanding situation. A really interesting project is one we did for Doug Casey in Old Ottawa South called Moorcroft. And if you go to the piece of land, so it used to be the Margaret Mary School. And you look at it, and there's this very prominent oak tree right at the edge. So we developed a plan where basically organized ourselves around this oak tree and met the criteria of yield that the owner was after. I probably excelled on yield in terms of number of units that we could put up. I think there's about 18 units that are part of this project, maybe a little bit less. But it's that kind of notion of being engaged early.
Right.
And then basically, this applies a lot to multiples, like infill multiples or suburban multiples. But it also applies to single family homes. Like if you just, our analysis of looking at a home site, where's the sun, where are the significant features?
Well, some folks for the residential stuff come to you early and say, what type of land property should we acquire?
Yeah, in fact, I've had cases where owners had bought a piece of land. We started design process, and I looked at it and I said, this house will never, ever, you'll never, ever recoup what you're going to put in this house in this subdivision. You need to find another piece. And we found another piece of land in a separate subdivision.
Right.
Where it made sense to do the quality of the quality of house that they were interested in doing. So that's part of like knowing this is going to cost you $2 million.
Yeah.
The upper end of this neighborhood is like $1.5 million. Like this is never going to catch up. Find yourself that's suitable to what you want to do.
Right. And is that what you use, Doug Casey? Is it?
Doug Casey
as an example. So he was sort of
Doug had a great eye for land, so he would find things ahead of time. And there are lots of examples like that. Hudson Park may be a good example of that.
the gardens, the Merritt.
The gardens, all of these were, his acquisitions and his.
Now, did he decide on doing the Art Deco style, or was that you?
No. Doug is a very much a traditionalist. Like he really believes historical styles are the strongest. And if you look through our projects like the Glassworks on Main Street or Moorcroft, or and also he worked very creatively with a friend of mine, a firm called Aerographics, who is into graphic design, and so the marketing. That where we want to go and the design, it was this like 3-piece part that actually put things together. So the names like the Glassworks, it's a great name on Main Street, or the Powell Lofts, or the Glasgow. These are all Doug's love of Rennie
Did
McIntosh.
Doug do the glass? That's 29 Main, is it?
Glassworks is
Glassworks.
Maine.
Right.
The Glasgow's on Bronson.
Right.
And
300 Powell.
And so Hudson Park's a really interesting example of.
I love those buildings, by the way.
Hudson Park's a really good example of kind of like looking at where you're at. So it's a nowhere site in downtown on Kent Street, except it's kitty corner right across from St. Pat's Cathedral. I don't know if it's called Cathedral, but it's a really important building. Green space around it. So we made 2 buildings with a corner plaza. As opposed to dominating with a building, we actually left the plaza open, and that serves as our entrance to those 2 buildings. But also, when you come out of those buildings, you look right across the street at St. Pat's.
Right. So it narrows the vision.
So when it creates this thing, you're in Centertown. Kent Street's not a very nice street, let's face it. But you do these buildings that actually give a sense of place.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a really important. Another part of Doug's team, which it was a landscape architect by the name of Gerald Wheeler, and Gerald, worked on every project as well. You can just see now this is a team, right?
Mm-hmm.
You got a graphic designer, this, and you kind of like you're all kind of enthused about.
Yeah.
We're going to do something special here, and that's part of the mix in doing it, and that's true of multiple projects where you have to sell more. You actually have to make people believe that what you're getting is something special. And to Doug's great credit, if you look at projects like the Gardens or the Merit, when it came to exterior detailing and adding more, there was always let's add more. So the Merit's got a lot of detailing on the outside of it.
Beautiful.
And I have to recognize my partner, now retired, Gord Lorimer, worked on that project. And that's the other part. Internally, you need a great team, right? People who work. And we did a lot of work with Gord, and I did a lot of work with Doug Casey at Charlesford.
Right. So it sounds like to be a successful developer, you engage the architect early, you surround yourself with a really good team of professionals, and have a good eye for land and have a vision for that end product.
Right. And that's the best architects, the best clients in my mind are not let they give you, just go away and I'll build whatever crazy thing you come up with. The best architects, and a lot of that has to do with our skill level, is that we can understand where you want to go, but we will come up with a vision. What do you think? What do you think of this? There's lots of projects that reflect that across the marketplace. I mean, now we're into larger projects like the 2 towers at the Blair Station we did with RioCan, or let me think. Lansdowne Park being a very great example of that.
Right.
I mean, to me, the building Lansdowne Park at the bridge is probably one of our finest projects, to tell you the truth.
Which one, sir? 1050 Bank?
I guess it's right at the bridge.
Yeah.
It's called the Rideau.
Yeah, the Rideau. Yeah, and the Vibe there.
It's right at the bridge.
Yeah.
So the Vibe and the Rideau were done at the same time. They're different characters, different demographics that are appealing. One is kind of a small scale and entry level. Yeah. Rideau is a little bit more upscale.
What was the thought process on the architecture of the 1050 Bank?
Context shapes everything. Whether it's an urban context or a suburban, if you're on a lake, you've got a water view, you've got significant features. Yeah. In the case of 1050, first of all, the 2 towers came out of recommendations by the Lansdowne Park design review panel, who said what we like is distinctive buildings that announce Lansdowne Park as being a special place. So that would be one of the first things. That gives room to height. So you got 20-story buildings. There are no 20-story buildings in the Glebe, right? So, and people look at it, we get 20 stories over there, we can do 20 over here. No, that's not the case. The purpose is it was supposed to be height there for the purposes of announcing Lansdowne Park. So the significant part of that is obviously the relationship to the canal,
mm-hmm.
the long visibility of the building, because you can see it at quite a distance, and the bridge. physical construct. So if you look at that, as you walk by and you go down to the canal, there's a certain scale that makes sense to you. And that's richly finished in the combination of stone and precast. As you go over the bridge, the scale of the podium matches you. So there's that relationship. And then above that is articulated tower, it's aluminum plate. And that you see from a number of experiences. For me, every night I drive home along the canal, and I see that. And I see it in all kinds of light, shimmering light in March when sun has a certain intensity. Late in the day, I can see it from my house. And that's close by. It's a distance building, but it's an up-close building. That's how it's just basically designed. It's designed to make sense. So you're walking across the bridge, it feels like a certain thing to you. There's a connectivity to that podium level. If you're, cycling along the canal, you've got this marker.
Wow.
So it has all of those things. And for that reason, I think it's a deeply significant building.
Wow. Wow. So the context really shapes your thinking on what this building should
Context
look.
shaped everything. Now, we had worked on a master plan of Lansdowne Park with Richard Brisbane at BBB Architects, he and I together, and another architect who designed the stadium.
What was that process like?
That was a really interesting process. In a huge team and people, really, the level of oversight by the community and people who didn't want you to touch land. People love downtown.
Yeah.
That, clearly was a point, very polarized.
Yeah.
And there's still that 10 or 15% who look at Lansdowne like, this is just a commercial thing. This is stupid. The reality
To
is
me,
that
it's beautiful.
I think at least 3 or 4 realities I think you need that you could highlight in terms of Lansdowne. Yes, it's substantially better than it was. That's it's low-hanging fruit. But people who complain about the commerciality of Lansdowne forget that at one time it was fenced, all the buildings were demolished, and the only reason you went there is if you bought a ticket. In other words, it always was a commercial interest.
Right.
Even though it was supposed to be about people. And if you live close by, it was fenced off, like you didn't go there. And so that's the level it had devolved to. You have to realize that Lansdowne at one time, there's a great lithograph from the late 1800s that in the distance shows, and I can send it to you, you can put it in your podcast, shows Parliament Hill, the Crown. And if you take from Parliament Hill, Bank Street and Elgin Street, and project them down, it forms Lansdowne Park.
Really?
Lansdowne Park ends up being, because the canal wraps around.
It curves around.
Wraps around. And originally, the parkway didn't go along the edge of Lansdowne Park because Lansdowne Park had a major slackwater canal that came into Lansdowne Park. So historically, there were boathouses. There was things that happened along the canal there. But Lansdowne Park was if Parliament Hill was the Crown, this was the town. And it was just so sad to see this town component devolve to almost nothing. So you probably don't realize this, but maybe you do. It had devolved so much that under Jim Watson's first round as mayor, they held a competition and they were prepared to sell Lansdowne Park to Canderel for less than $5 million.
Really?
And that was when the city had not amalgamated. Bob Shirelli was the regional chair at that time. And he said, the city's going to become one. We are not going to release Lansdowne Park.
Wow.
So that was 90s. And we got hired by Shirelli to demonstrate, the regional chair, to demonstrate what could happen at Lansdowne if you redevelop them. So we looked at doing various schemes of adding density, et cetera. And so Bob Shirelli was the reason that Lansdowne was not sold. As a result of that, they had to give they had to back out of their deal with Canderel. They gave them management fees or whatever to make it go away.
Oh.
No, this is all true.
What a story.
This is all true. So when Lansdowne 2.0 came along, it was kind of this notion of how do we reinvent this place? The historical buildings like the Horticulture Building, the Aberdeen Pavilion, and to kind of remove the other buildings that didn't make sense. You realize that the Horticulture Building was picked up and moved from one end of the Cattle Castle, the Aberdeen Pavilion, to the other.
It was, eh?
The entire building was picked up and moved.
I didn't know that.
A lot of people
That's a
don't.
huge
A
building.
lot of people don't know this. There's 2 heritage assets, and we had to go through the whole heritage approvals that allowed that to happen.
Wow.
Retention of the building. And then when they put it down on top of the parking garage. So now actually you had a building that actually made sense and connected. When it did that, it opened up all of the other land in between to be redeveloped. The fundamental streets of Lansdowne, one is Exhibition Way that takes you right through and looks at the Aberdeen Pavilion. The Aberdeen Pavilion or the Cattle Castle are both synonymous names. But we created a parallel street. If you stand at the Horticulture Building and you look towards Bank Street, it focuses on the Glebe Center stone building. So we created a new street, basically, that where the Sunset Grill is on and there's other uses there. I mean, so going through some realities and reflections on Lansdowne, it's not great retailing. Let's be fair, it's not great retailing, and we know that. But the reinvention of activity there. So right now it's on fire, and a lot of it has to do with private programming. It's OSEG programming, that thing for basketball, football, lacrosse, women's soccer, men's soccer, festivals, Christmas market.
Yeah.
Every time we love you keep on going.
When we go to the movies there, we got to check what's going on tonight to see what time we have to leave because of the crowds, which is a good thing.
Yeah, I forgot Junior A hockey, but they actually made that place hum. And, the naysayers hilarious, but, it's a commercial interest. Yeah. It's not on transit, but, it's not only saved Lansdowne, it's saved and made Ottawa South connect better to the Glebe. I live close by. I watch the foot traffic now across the bridge. It's phenomenal.
Yeah,
what's happened there in terms of activity, and then kids' activities, and and one of the things of the plan was to make things open and transparent. So you walk through it. There's lots of ways you can now walk from Homewood in between those houses. And by the way, we did all those little townhouses hiding the commercial buildings.
We've sold a few of those.
So it really certainly became this place now where they're into 2.0, and we're looking at moving the rink to the berm at the end and then redeveloping the podium so that we can have residential and commercial industry.
So
plus a new north side stands.
New north side stands. And is there more... Are there more condominium towers going in?
It will probably be rental, but there'll probably be 600 to 700 units, 600 to 800 units. So
where's that going?
Well, what people don't realize is that big engineering truss that is the north side stands comes up like this, and then the roof over top and the struts go this way. That is such a space hog that it's possible to build the north side stands replicating the south side stands here, have a separating distance of 40 or 50 feet, then actually have enough space over to build a condominium or apartment buildings, and still be farther set back than the struts are that currently come out onto Exhibition Way. Next time you're there, you should look at that.
Yeah.
It's an amazing, I call it a space hog. It's just like, it's so inefficient in terms of this. So what's going to happen on Exhibition Way, there will be now a really solid podium of retail that goes along there, and mixed use, other uses. And then there's a space, and above the retail is where the towers go.
And then the new north side.
Yeah, and then the new north side stands.
Oh, interesting. So you're repurposing the space a little bit.
Just repurposing this space and again, making it better and better. So I think everybody felt that when they only did the milieu and the Rideau, that there could have been more residential, but the residents on Homewood were reacting so heavily, and the complications of construction perhaps had Trinity back away from forcing through the residential, but they could have easily built, 300, 400, 500 units more than what they did.
Right.
So anyway, there's a whole process to how that comes into place. So, along those ideas that Lansdowne now has become the place.
Yeah.
It has stolen market share from the market.
Byward market, yeah.
For a variety of reasons. When your daughter grows up to 16 or 17, you wouldn't send her to the market on Saturday night. You might send her to Lansdowne. So it has that kind of differentiation to it. It's a real people place. There's all generations, age groups that actually go there. Right?
Could you see activity swing back to the Byward market like it used to be?
Well, we're actually working on a little bit of work. We're doing some study work there. Okay. But the Byward market is lacking what Lansdowne has, which there's a number of things about the Byward market. I would say the biggest thing is the lack of authenticity and diversity. So it's the real market. It was a real market. But originally, Ottawa had great markets. Parkdale Market and Lansdowne Park and the Byward Market were go-to places for produce, which you thought was local, may not have been totally local, but there's always a local flavor to it. I use the term authenticity and said so. You may not be from there, but you're selling me an authentic product as opposed to someone reselling stuff, and it is devolved, and the other issues around safety. Safety is different than the homelessness issue, and which might frighten some people off. But people being shot in the market, that kind of thing, doesn't sit well.
Yeah.
So I mean, there is the difference between the two, and the last thing I would say is that what Lansdowne has is a concerted management team, OSEG, which are taking care of that facility. I don't necessarily see the same thing at the Byward market.
Right.
And now it's the city's trying to do the work of reinventing that, but I don't see the strong developer or the sole manager, whatever.
Policing it in a way.
Programming, being accountable, the leasing, all the trying to coordinate that.
Right.
The last thing I would say about Lansdowne Park, thank goodness for OSEG and two strong characters, Roger Greenberg and John Ruddy. John, by the way, is a classmate of mine.
Oh, yeah?
Went through architecture with myself.
Really?
And a teammate. He and I both played football for Carl.
Come on.
Yeah. So those two guys and their organizations have really stepped up in a way that most people don't realize, like to fund all that, put it in place. And I know people talk about the financial model and how it's hidden and whatever. But honestly, there's something's created there that wasn't there.
Yeah.
15 years ago, this did not exist.
Yeah. It's certainly vibrant. we go all the time.
Yeah. But so, things are possible.
Yeah.
Could it be better? Yeah, it could be better.
Yeah.
Anything
can be better. Yeah.
Well, once you're on a track to make things better, it's a lot easier as those leases turn over and it becomes a better place. Then the quality of the tenant picks up as well.
Right. Want to go back to your roots here. The residential custom.
Sure.
The Hobin houses.
Yeah.
As you call them. I want to start with McKay Lake Custom Residence. What a home.
Which one?
McKay, flat roof, copper.
Oh yeah, that's
or the
Old Prospect,
or the cottage, cottage with the pavilions, the glass links.
All of those projects. I talk about big projects. I'll talk about houses. I think our houses focus on a number of themes. One of them is just understanding the context of your house. And two is craft, understanding, how to make your materials richer. and not just use whatever you can get at Home Depot. And you can see how we've changed the palette in the city around the use of stone. Like our first house we did with using Aristcraft stone, real stone, was Ron Zambini's house, which was just south of the golf course on Greenbank. And that focus on craft being really, really important. The other thing is light. Quality of light in our buildings, I think, is quite over the top, and we focus a lot on views and access to light, making the house
natural lighting as
light.
well.
Yeah.
Or is that what you're referring to? Or
natural light. Yeah,
right.
For sure. So understanding orientation is really important in every one of those things, and not just the sun's here and there. No, understanding the pattern of light throughout the year. So in the winter, sun angles very low. It arises in the southeast and sets in the southwest. The equinox, which is March and September, rises directly east and sets directly west. We're now coming up to the summer solstice. It's hard to believe. What's the date today? We're like 15 days away from the summer solstice. The sun is going to rise in the northeast, and it's going to set in the northwest. The sun will set on June 21st, literally in the northwest. And so I don't know where your house is, but the sun is always moving throughout the course of the year. And the quality of that light through it, by the way, I mean, the sun will always be at the same position at 3:00. No question. It'll be there. So at 3:00, no matter what, it's winter, spring, or summer, it's going to be there. The angle will change. The angle will be lower or higher. But when you get to the summer, the sun's literally setting at 9:00 on your phone, on your watch, right? It's setting it at 9:00. It's getting up at 3:00.
Right.
It's way over here, coming all the way around here. Now the angle changes during that time. So it's just understanding the sun from that perspective.
So how do you actually model that out?
We do all of that now. We do that with computer modeling. We can, we're designing a house for you. I'll take you in any room and show you what the light's going to be throughout the year.
Right.
If you want to do it hour by hour, you can do it. And for our larger project works, like getting stuff approved with the city, sun shadowing, understanding what the impact bigger buildings have is important. But when you're doing a house, it becomes very, very sensitive, sensual. Like, do you like light in your master bedroom? Do you want to wake up the light? Do you not? Like that kind of thing. So you come back to laying out a house. For me, it's like you follow the functional pattern of how you'd like to, how you live. If it's an urban house, you might arrive by bike or by walking up to your house. If it's a suburban house, it's the car. It's the car, the mudroom, the kitchen, the front entrance. You follow these natural patterns, and then you start to look at how can we make this house feel like it's more special? And a lot of that observation, the relationship of internal spaces to exterior space, is very much a Frank Lloyd Wright idea, like this notion of prospect, being able to see out. The relationship to nature has become more and more a theme in architecture, as opposed to image-oriented architecture. It's one of the challenges that I would have with historical buildings where you focus on a style. So more interested in looking at the building, right, as opposed to what is experienced like to live in the building. So the houses on Rockcliffe, over in Rockcliffe, 400 Acacia, which is a reno we just did, and the house we did, Kitty Corner of the Street, they were very much houses that were designed of a style. There's an arts and craft feel to them. They all had craft, that is, that high quality materials, but quirky little things that were about a style of the period. I think we've moved beyond that now to something that's a lot more organic. So the house on McKay Lake, the craft is exhibited in the copper and the stone. The space, the understanding of sight is understanding what your prospect and view is, where you're looking over top of the lake at the second level, and then above that in the master bedroom, and then a rooftop terrace beyond them. The functionality comes like hiding the garage around the side. And in a luxurious house, you never actually want to see the garage as being the front thing. The garage is not a house-defining element. In the suburbs where you only got spaces this big and you got a double-car garage, you don't have a lot left over to actually demonstrate the house. That's the challenge of your pattern brick suburban development. But in that house, garage discreetly off to the side, off Prospect. It's elegantly done. It's not a feature, but it ties into the house. But that thinking applies to literally all of the houses that we've done. Clearly, if you're doing a house in nature, and we just finished 2 or 3 of them, one up in Halliburton, one near Portland, in the Big Rita Lake system. It's this notion of how do I arrive at what is going to be, whether it's a lake house or it's a cottage, probably a distinction depending on substance. I arrive, what does it feel like my arrival point is? Why am I here? Am I here for the interior space, or am I here because of what's out there in nature? So you'll look at our houses entry system often looks right straight through to it. So if it's a river or lake, it looks right through. You pattern the house around those views so you don't have any second-class citizens. Like you don't put their bedrooms in the back or don't have a view. Everybody has a view. So that comes with having a slightly larger piece of land where you can do that. But it's also just an attitude. As you make houses with democratically open to view, you also make them thinner. As you make them thinner, you get light on both sides of a building. So it makes them really bright. I'm doing a brand new cottage for myself up on the Ottawa River. And I can go work. I don't have to turn on a light. I don't have to turn on a light. And I don't have an unbelievable amount of glass. I just like the way it's designed.
Is there such thing as too much light?
If this room were another 10 feet wider, this would be beautiful living space. All that light's coming from there. But you have the opportunity to add in the light over on the other side, which allows you you get a very bright house without relying on artificial light.
Is there such thing as too much natural light?
There can be. Yeah. That's the other part. Certain types of light are very, very hard. Like west light without the protection of trees, west windows. Your house overheats the fastest because of summertime. The sun comes around, it's strong, and it lowers. And then if you put lots of windows on the west side of your house will overheat in no time. You can put tons of windows on the east, even on the south, because don't forget the sun angle is very high in the summertime.
Right.
So you don't get the same sun penetration. So if you look at famous artist studios, they like to use north light. Because north light is indirect light, it's calm. It's not like morning light where it's really bright, or west light, which is really strong. And I think about that stuff all the time. Like there's certain buildings I know. We just finished a building on the east side of the canal at Main Street, the Echo, great building, faces due west.
It's uniform, right?
Yes, uniform. Would due west without trees. Like my house.
Say it again, sorry.
It faces due west.
Okay.
There's no trees in front.
So is the sun beaming in?
Sun beams in. So it's a very hard light. You'd think if you had an art collection, you want to be careful about it. I mean, my house on the canal has certain windows that are actually facing north, but they're facing northwest. So before the foliage comes out on the trees in April, the sun has migrated around. I have to drop the blinds to be able to watch TV because the sun is lower and stronger.
Right.
And there's no foliage to mask the light.
Right.
So I'm conscious of that stuff all the time.
So your cottage, that you're building now or designing now, what's the goal with lighting?
What's the goal? The goal for me is not so much lighting. It's like views that are out. I'm fairly fortunate, so I've trees that mask any sun penetration, but I have the undercover gives me these great views. So, like my cottage is a classic thing. Where's the sun in the morning when you get up? Outside screened-in porch. Is it bright and sunny on that screen? Where do I see from the screened-in porch? I have this beautiful view upriver to Lac Coulange. You can see the mountains in the distance. Every year,
Yes.
every year we follow the sun. June 21st is the summer solstice. We know that notch in the hills is where the sun goes down. So the fun parts are in the summer where the sun is sort of hanging around there. And then you get to summer and you realize to September and the sun's setting over here and it's telegraphing to you winter's coming. So it's that thing where you're watching the natural world and you understand the natural world. The same thing comes with, wind. Like we just had a horrible weekend this last weekend. Well, I call a 3-day blow with the wind is coming down the river with tremendous force. Makes it terribly uncomfortable. So anyways, these are things that you consider when you see your house as being in the landscape. And the reason that you're doing a custom house, I would suggest, is to understand where you are on the planet. Now, that might be a significant feature like a special tree or a feature, a meadow or something like that you focus on. But it grounds the house in its place. One of the things that I think is really important in a 2-story house is the position of a stairwell. For me, the stairwell is that opportunity to kind of almost step out of the house and be like you're in the landscape. So most of our stairs are on outside walls, or like at my house on the canal. I come downstairs, I look directly at the canal. It's a vertical window
on the edge of the home.
Yeah, right up. So my stair comes down, it looks right out the canal. So I follow that winter, spring before no leaves, summer, the glistening because the leaves taken away a lot of the view. And above that, I get to see the Gatineau Hills. So, those are experiential things about a house. When you get into the house itself, subtle details like detailing around the windows, ceiling treatments. Those are all levels of craft to get a certain reaction. And then the materials you use, like my new cottage doesn't have any drywall. It's all wood. So it's beams and it's not crazy peak stuff, but it's all subtlety.
It just hit me. I know the difference between you and most other architects. And this is why you say, if you want us to draw you just a set of plans, we're not the right firm.
Yeah.
You're an artist.
There is an artistic component. I would say there is. It's funny you should pick on that because I drive through certain neighborhoods where there's lots of redevelopment turnover, like that neighborhood north of Scott Street, west of Tunney's Pasture, and east of Island Park Drive.
Oh yeah,
there's a ton of infills in there, and they use some of the materials that we have tried to develop with different types of sidings that we have developed, and we don't try to use the same profile every time. In fact, we deliberately try to change it so that no one can follow you. But there are a whole bunch of followers putting together those same materials, the stone, etc., and they lack artistic quality.
You're not fond.
They struggle with the art side of it.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way. Like it's just the compositional side.
Right.
And I think there's lots of architects who struggle with composition, that pattern of combination of materials and what feels right. You can use the same materials and not come up with the same result.
Right. Wow. To shift gears, before we depart here, I'm just curious your take on. We know that a lot of the zoning bylaws are
Yeah.
changing. Things are changing at the city. I'm just curious your take on the way that you think over the next 10, 20, 50 years how this city should be growing.
Well, okay. Like, let's put it into themes. Let's think about this. Currently, there's a lot of notion about redevelopment around transit stations, and the low-hanging fruit would be like Scott Street, transit station, Westboro. It's a street, bang, bang, bang. You have a series of high-rise buildings. You get density, but you don't get a sense of place. We are working on numerous sites where we're combining building and a new sense of open space. So loosely you call that parks, but good examples, we're doing a redevelopment at the corner of Walkley and Bank Street. It's right across the street from the transit station. It's currently got a value village and Chinese restaurant, something else in it. We're redesigning that to have like about 1,200 units on it based on 4 or 5 towers and a park that centers the whole thing. So it's an urban space that's directly adjacent to your building. Ottawa doesn't have a lot of these. We don't have many public parks that are sized right. I mean, we've got ball diamonds and soccer pitches, etc., that you go to, but the urban parks like Minto Park, Dundonald Park, there's a few glimpses here and there of parks that have got res around it. So that's a good example where we're doing master planning. We're doing a combination of high-rise and park system. And we've got a bunch of those. We're looking at redevelopment of Carlingwood Shopping Center. We're doing the Riverside South Town Center, the Falcon Ridge Golf Course. These are all kind of large, as well as the work we did on LeBreton Flats and Greystone. Greystone being a good example of like, how do you actually create meaningful green space as you're building density? Greystone's probably the best demonstrated example of you take a neighborhood, which was originally ecclesiastical lands, the Oblate Fathers, but it separated 2 neighborhoods. And so all those neighborhoods were, I'm going to call them monocultures. There were singles and semis would be all that you would see. Maybe some row houses, not much density. And then we had this opportunity on Greystone actually to develop a variety of house types. Mixed-use apartments on the street with retail, high-rise condos with view of the river, mid-rise, low-rise, all that kind of stuff into the mix. And in the middle of that, create a green edge, create a little park in front of the Oblate Farm at the Grand Allée, and actually pull that all together. So that would be a model for the city as it grows, where you have a combination of uses, but they have to make sense in terms of being a lot of talk about the 15-minute neighborhood, like what it means. How far away is your school? School's a big thing.
Are you in support of the 15-minute neighborhood theory?
Well, I'm in support of the 15-minute neighborhood. I just don't see any. I literally, we're just doing stuff the same way I always do. Put a school site there, something over here. Maybe there's a church site every once in a while. And then we just build product. That's all. And we build baseball diamonds and soccer pitches. And that's not a cohesive.
Is the city looking at making policy directives to force the 15
I
minutes?
personally don't think there's much. They're just using planning device, and basically Ottawa is a pretty lazy place in terms of progressive developers. Like at that master plan, I'd say that one of our challenges is that people are just happy to divide stuff up. You get an engineer to design a subdivision, the most efficient thing. That's your subdivision. School site left here. Retail out by the street. I don't see a lot of the 15-minute neighborhood actually being.
So is there
deployed.
room for a developer to come in
with
absolutely.
These
new ideas that actually implement the 15
the last time that really a developer had a big idea was probably Bill Tarrant when he did Canada as an idea. It's morphed into something else now, but.
So would the city be receptive to someone coming in and looking to reshape communities?
Well, it's interesting. One of the big divisive topics right now is this Taiwan development where Taggart and the Algonquins basically are hoping to develop something. I'd be curious to see how that's planned out. There's a possibility, but actually what you're seeing because of pressure outside the city is Carleton Place, Arndt Prior, Almont,
places are
becoming these 15, they've used the core, but they don't have tons of growth.
Right.
And now they have the ability actually to connect that stuff together. So I mentioned transit, the work around transit station, the 15-minute neighborhood. There is the new, so I'm sitting as a member of the mayor's task force on housing, which I can't really talk a lot, but I think what I see as an architect is certain changes that are being introduced now that allow for a densification of existing neighborhoods is starting to have an impact, I think, good and bad. Depending on how you interpret the notion that every building like that house over there could have 2 additional dwelling units in it. And there's no development fees for those additional development units. So I think when they drafted it, they thought the notion they'll have a house and you'll have 2 small units. Well, there's no restriction on size. So now you could have 3 big units on that piece of land, which, and I don't think people have actually thought all of this through. I do think that from a livability perspective, there's a limit to how long you will stay in a high rise by a transit station. It'll serve a purpose for a certain period of time, but protects when you're young. Maybe if you're working professional, so on you're single, it makes sense to you, it's easy. But if you're raising a family in the context, family housing in something other than a single family home or a townhouse is perhaps where things are going to evolve to. We're going to find more interesting ways of developing accommodation, because I think it's part of the housing challenge of how we do that, right?
Right. We're going to move into some rapid fire questions.
Sure.
These are fun, but feel free to say pass. Here we go. You ready?
Yep.
Favorite building material?
It has to be wood.
A city you never tire of visiting?
London.
Music in the background while designing or quiet?
Both.
Okay.
Both. That would be
depending on what you're designing.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I'm curious what type of music.
Well, I'm a singer-songwriter guy, so the classics, John Prine, Brandy Carlisle, those kind of, Lyle Lovett, those guys always, guys are real singer-songwriter people, which includes a lot of classic, like folky guys, like way back when you learn to play guitar, it's Paul Simon and all this kind of stuff. But I also have a huge increasing appreciation for classic country artists.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So, I mean, you think
Chet Akins?
No. Things like George Jones. If you the saddest song you ever heard was "He Stopped Loving Her Today." I mean, I think and I hate new country, so it's just can't stand it.
Okay. Hand sketch or digital model?
Hand sketch.
First thing you notice in a space?
First thing I notice in a space. In a space? A built space?
A built space.
What's the feature in the room? What's... I would... first thing that would make a difference in a space
Sure.
would be A, windows, and B, height of the room.
Windows.
Because I'm tall, I really notice it if it's
Right. Right. Last but not least, 100 years from now, one word you would hope to be remembered by.
Well, now you're into a whole different part of my life. That's a good question. Integrity. One of the things about we didn't talk about in this little segue is that I'm a person of deep personal Christian faith. I never talk about that when I'm in the office, but that my intensity of being responsible to individuals, the people who work with me, is really important. Integrity in terms of how I operate myself. For a long time, my wife worked in the business. Like as soon as she was a nurse, as soon as the business was going, she came to work for the business. She worked. So this business is a family-oriented business. My granddaughter comes in here on a regular basis. People bring their dogs in here. This place is a real place. It's a community. Mm. And I think that attitude of family and values shape this place. And I will be remembered maybe for the buildings as I would much rather be remembered for the values that I brought to how I work and how I create. I mean, work to me is like doing the most beautiful thing that is the work that it's so blessed to be able to think, actually, you were made to be creative. Why not be creative? Why you get pigeonholed? I understand a lot of people get trapped. They can't do what they really want to do. And I've been blessed to be able to do that. But to me, that kind of like connection between skills that you have and how you operate shape. We say we have 5 value themes in this office. Design is really important. Service to clients is really community. Like we really feel, we hold ourselves accountable to charitable giving. Our spreadsheets, our income sheet actually has charitable giving as a known item. Like we tithe our cash and our resources. We think that's really important. The other thing is like office culture is really important, and that's where it ties that thing together. And then obviously we do a lot of collaboration as a group. So, to me, the most powerful thing about this place is that I get to actually live one set of values. I don't act at home differently than I act here. And I think if you can act consistently in your life, you have the ability to kind of live authentically, right? I'm not trying to pretend that I'm nice to you. And we had a lady who worked for us for a long time, Deborah, and we all called her the front office goddess. But she would say to me sometimes when a client left the room after, they said, he was really nice to you. He was horrible to me. And I go, well, not horrible, but because that individual perceived her to be less powerful than he was. And that's something hopefully we can get by. But anyways, yeah.
Wow.
That's a deep question.
We'll end on that. I like it. Well, thank you so much for coming on.
You're welcome.
I really do feel like I really understand your history, how it all shaped up and came together. It's an incredibly compelling story.
A lot of rambling in there.
No, it's a very inspiring story. So I really appreciate you sharing it.
Good.
It's been great. Thank you so much.
Thank you for tuning into Umber Talks. Don't forget to follow the show and share with a friend you think would love this episode. See you next time. Bye.